Jake Morrison kicked a small rock as he walked down the dusty path toward the spaceport. The sun was setting over New Terra Colony, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. His little sister Lucy skipped beside him, her blonde hair bouncing with each step. "Why do we have to get supplies today?" Lucy asked, swinging the empty supply bag in her hand. "Can't we do it tomorrow?" "Dr. Carter needs the medical equipment for her research," Jake replied, adjusting his jacket. At 17, he was tall and lean, with brown hair that always seemed messy no matter how much he tried to fix it. Besides, the supply ship only comes once a week. New Terra was a small farming colony on the edge of human space. Most people here grew crops or raised animals. Dr. Helen Carter, who had taken care of Jake and Lucy since their parents died 3 years ago, was different. She studied the planet's strange plants and animals, especially the Zephyrians. The Zephyrians were tall beings made of what looked like living crystal. They moved slowly and spoke in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes. Most humans found them peaceful and helpful. Jake had grown up around them and considered them friends. As they reached the spaceport, Jake saw the weekly supply ship landing on the metal platform. White steam hissed from its engines as it settled down. Around the landing pad, human workers moved to unload boxes and containers. "There's Commander Stone," Lucy said, pointing to a man in a blue uniform. Alex Stone was in charge of the colony's small defense force. He had only 10 soldiers and 2 old patrol ships, but New Terra was so far from any conflict that nobody worried about trouble. Jake waved at the commander, who nodded back. Everything seemed normal and peaceful, just like every other supply day. That's when the sky exploded. 3 black ships dropped out of hyperspace above the colony. They were shaped like sharp spears with red markings along their hulls. Jake had seen pictures of ships like these in school. They belonged to the Korthak, a species known for attacking other worlds and taking prisoners as slaves. "Get down," Commander Stone shouted, pulling out his weapon. The Korthak ships fired bright red beams at the spaceport. The supply ship erupted in flames, throwing pieces of metal in all directions. People screamed and ran for cover behind buildings and vehicles. Jake grabbed Lucy's hand and pulled her behind a concrete barrier. His heart pounded as he watched the sky fill with more enemy ships. Where had they come from? Why were they attacking New Terra? "Jake, I'm scared," Lucy whispered, pressing close to him. "It's okay," he said, trying to sound calm even though his hands were shaking. "Commander Stone and his soldiers will protect us." But Jake could see that the colony's defenses were no match for the Korthak attack. The 2 patrol ships that tried to fight back were destroyed in seconds. The few defense weapons around the spaceport were quickly silenced by enemy fire. One of the black ships landed near the spaceport. A ramp lowered and creatures walked out that made Jake's blood run cold. The Korthak were massive, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin was dark gray and covered in thick plates like armor. Their faces had 4 eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. Each one carried a weapon that glowed with red energy. "Find the humans," one of them growled in a voice like grinding metal. "Take the young ones. Kill the rest." Jake watched in horror as the Korthak soldiers spread out across the spaceport area. Some humans tried to run, but the aliens were faster. Others tried to hide, but the Korthak had devices that could detect them. Commander Stone and his remaining soldiers fought bravely, but their weapons barely scratched the aliens' thick skin. One by one, the defenders fell. "We have to run," Jake whispered to Lucy. He looked around the barrier and saw a path that led back toward the colony buildings. If they could reach Dr. Carter's lab, maybe they could hide until help arrived. "Now," he said, taking Lucy's hand. They ran from behind the barrier, keeping low and trying to stay quiet. Jake's legs felt weak with fear, but he forced himself to keep moving. They were halfway to safety when a deep voice called out behind them. "Stop running, little humans." Jake turned and saw a Korthak warrior pointing his weapon at them. The alien's 4 eyes glowed with cruel amusement. The red energy weapon hummed with deadly power. "Please," Jake said, stepping in front of Lucy. "She's just a kid. Don't hurt her." The Korthak laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a cliff. "The young ones are worth more as slaves, but I only need one of you." The alien raised his weapon and aimed it at Lucy. Jake could see the red energy building up inside the barrel. In a few seconds, his little sister would be dead. Time seemed to slow down. Jake could hear his heartbeat in his ears. He could see the fear in Lucy's blue eyes. He could smell the smoke from the burning ships. Without thinking, Jake threw himself sideways, pushing Lucy out of the way just as the Korthak fired. The red energy beam hit Jake square in the chest. He expected to feel pain, to feel his life ending. Instead, something incredible happened. The energy slammed into him like a wave, but instead of burning through his body, it seemed to flow into him. Jake felt the power racing through his veins, filling every cell with electric fire. His vision flashed white for a moment. When it cleared, he was standing exactly where he had been before. The hole that should have been in his chest wasn't there. His clothes weren't even burned. The Korthak warrior staggered backward, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," he whispered. Jake looked down at his hands. For just a second, he could swear they were glowing with the same red energy that had hit him. Then the glow faded and they looked normal again. "What did you do to me?" Jake asked, but his voice sounded different somehow. Stronger. The Korthak didn't answer. Instead, he raised his weapon again, this time aiming at Jake. But before he could fire, Commander Stone appeared and shot the alien from behind. The Korthak fell forward and didn't move. "Are you hurt?" Stone asked, running over to check on them. Jake shook his head, still confused about what had happened. He felt fine. Better than fine, actually. He felt like he could run for miles or lift a car over his head. "We need to get you two to safety," Stone said. "This attack is just the beginning." As they ran toward the colony buildings, Jake couldn't stop thinking about the moment when the energy hit him. He had felt it flow into his body like water being absorbed by dry ground. What did it mean? Why hadn't it killed him like it should have? Behind them, more Korthak ships were landing. Jake could hear the aliens shouting orders and the sound of weapons firing. Whatever had happened to him, he had a feeling it was going to change everything. Dr. Helen Carter moved the medical scanner over Jake's chest for the 4th time in an hour. The small device beeped and showed numbers on its screen that made no sense to her. According to every test she had run, Jake Morrison should be dead. "Hold still," she said, her voice tight with worry. "I need to check your heart again." Jake sat on the examination table in Dr. Carter's underground lab. The lab was built beneath the main colony building, designed to protect her research from storms and other dangers. Now it was protecting them from something much worse. "I feel fine," Jake said for the 10th time. "Actually, I feel great. That was the problem. 3 hours ago, a Korthak energy weapon had hit Jake directly in the chest. The weapon should have burned a hole through his body and killed him instantly. Instead, Jake was sitting here looking healthier than he had ever looked in his life. Lucy sat in a corner of the lab, playing with her tablet to distract herself from the scary sounds coming from above. Every few minutes, they could hear explosions and weapons fire as the Korthak continued their attack on the colony. "The scanner shows changes in your DNA," Dr. Carter said, studying the readings. "Sections that were inactive before are now active. It's like something woke up inside your genetic code." Commander Stone stood near the lab's entrance, listening to reports on his radio. His uniform was torn and dirty from the fighting. Of his 10 soldiers, only 3 were still alive and fighting. "The Korthak have taken the spaceport and the main power station," he reported. "They're moving through the residential areas, taking prisoners. We can't hold them off much longer." "How long until help arrives?" Dr. Carter asked. Stone's face was grim. "I sent a distress signal, but the nearest Earth defense ship is 3 days away. We're on our own." As if responding to their conversation, the lab's lights flickered as another explosion shook the building above them. Dust fell from the ceiling, and Lucy looked up from her tablet with frightened eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," Dr. Carter said, trying to smile. "We're safe down here." But Jake could see the worry in her eyes. The lab's entrance was hidden, but if the Korthak had scanners like the one Dr. Carter was using, they would eventually find this place. A new sound echoed through the lab's air system. It was musical and beautiful, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Jake recognized it immediately. "That's harmonious wind through crystals," he said, referring to the Zephyrian elder who often visited Dr. Carter's lab. "He's trying to communicate." Dr. Carter pressed a button on her desk, opening the communication channel to the surface. The musical tones became clearer, forming patterns that Jake had learned to understand over the years. He says, "The Korthak are looking for something specific," Jake translated. "Something that gives off energy. He wants to speak with us." "Tell him it's too dangerous," Stone said. The Korthak will see him. But Jake was already responding in the musical language of the Zephyrians. His pronunciation wasn't perfect, but he had been practicing since he was a child. After a few minutes of conversation, his face grew pale. "What did he say?" Dr. Carter asked. "He says the Zephyrians have been expecting this day for a very long time," Jake said slowly. "He says humans carry the blood of an ancient race called the Architects. Most humans never awaken their abilities, but when they do, it sends out a signal that can be detected across the galaxy." "What kind of abilities?" Commander Stone asked. Jake looked down at his hands. "The ability to absorb and redirect energy. The Architects created humans as bridges between different species, designed to unite the galaxy when great threats appeared." "That's impossible," Stone said. "Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records going back millions of years." "Harmonious says the Architects seeded many worlds with their genetic code," Jake continued, still listening to the musical tones. "They modified existing species rather than creating new ones. Most of the modifications stayed dormant unless triggered by extreme stress or energy exposure." Dr. Carter looked at her scanner readings again. "That would explain the DNA changes. The Korthak energy beam didn't hurt Jake because his body absorbed it and used it to activate dormant genetic sequences." "He's still talking," Jake said, concentrating on the musical patterns. "He says the Korthak have been hunting awakened humans for centuries. They drain their energy to power their war machines. That's why they attacked our colony. They detected the energy signature when I awakened." The communication channel suddenly filled with the sound of weapons fire and harsh Korthak voices, then silence. "Harmonious," Jake called out, but there was no response. Commander Stone checked his radio. "My scouts report that the Korthak have captured the Zephyrian settlement. They're loading prisoners onto their ships." "We have to help them," Jake said, standing up from the examination table. "With what?" Stone asked. "We have 3 soldiers and a few small weapons against an entire Korthak war party." Jake felt something stirring inside his chest. It was like a warm current flowing through his body, making him feel stronger and more alert. "Maybe we have more than that." "Jake, no," Dr. Carter said, seeing the look in his eyes. "You don't understand what's happening to you. These abilities could be dangerous." "People are dying up there," Jake said. "The Zephyrians are being taken as slaves because the Korthak are looking for me. I can't just hide down here." "You're just a kid," Stone said. "I'm the reason they're here," Jake replied. "That makes it my responsibility." Before anyone could stop him, Jake pressed his hand against the metal wall of the lab. He concentrated on the warm feeling in his chest, trying to direct it through his arm. The metal under his palm began to glow with red energy, the same color as the Korthak weapon that had hit him. "Incredible," Dr. Carter whispered. "You're converting stored energy and channeling it through physical contact." Jake pulled his hand away, leaving a glowing handprint on the wall. "I can feel it inside me. It's like having a battery that never runs out." "But we don't know what else it might do to you," Dr. Carter said. "These genetic changes could have side effects. You could burn yourself out or worse." "Then we need to find out fast," Jake said. "Because the Korthak aren't going to wait for us to figure it out." Commander Stone's radio crackled with a new message. "Sir, we've got movement at the north entrance. Looks like they found us." Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors above the lab. The Korthak were searching the building, moving closer to the hidden entrance with each passing minute. "There's another way out," Dr. Carter said, pointing to a maintenance tunnel at the back of the lab. "It leads to the old mining system. We could reach the forest from there?" "And then what?" Stone asked. "Hide in the woods while they destroy the colony?" Jake looked at his sister, who was trying to be brave but couldn't hide her fear. He thought about all the colonists who had been captured or killed. He thought about Harmonious Wind-Through Crystals and the other Zephyrians who had been taken prisoner. "No more hiding," he said. "If I'm really what Harmonious says I am, then it's time to find out what these abilities can do." The warm energy inside his chest pulsed stronger as if responding to his determination. Jake didn't know what he was capable of, but he was about to find out. Above them, the Korthak voices grew louder. They were running out of time. Captain Rita Hayes watched the tactical display on her ship's bridge as the Aurora dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Terra system. What she saw made her stomach clench with worry. "How many Korthak ships?" she asked her weapons officer. 12 confirmed, Captain," Lieutenant Danny Cross replied. "All heavy cruisers. They've got the planet completely blockaded." Rita had been commanding Earth defense ships for 15 years, but she had never seen a Korthak force this large attacking a small farming colony. New Terra had no strategic value and no rare resources. Why would they bring such overwhelming force against innocent civilians? "Any word from the surface?" she asked. "We received a distress signal 18 hours ago," her communications officer reported. "Nothing since then. The Korthak are jamming all frequencies." Rita studied the enemy formation. The Aurora was a fast ship with good weapons, but it was only one vessel against 12. Even with her experienced crew, the odds were impossible. "Captain," Cross said, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Korthak ship. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed the face of a Korthak war leader. His gray skin was covered in scars and his 4 eyes burned with cruel intelligence. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. "Human vessel, I am War Prime Skullrender. You will withdraw from this system immediately or be destroyed." "This is Captain Hayes of the Earth defense ship Aurora," Rita replied, keeping her voice steady. "You are attacking human civilians in violation of galactic law. Withdraw your forces and release your prisoners." The Korthak leader laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We do not recognize human law. We have found what we came for. Leave now or share the fate of your colony." The transmission ended, leaving Rita staring at a blank screen. Whatever the Korthak had come for, they considered it valuable enough to risk war with Earth. On the planet's surface, Jake crouched behind the ruins of a storage building, watching a group of Korthak soldiers march human prisoners toward their ships. His plan to rescue the colonists wasn't going well. "This is crazy," whispered Commander Stone, who was hidden beside him. "We should have stayed in the tunnels." Jake ignored him. Over the past 6 hours, he had learned to use his abilities in small ways. He could absorb energy from power cells and redirect it to create brief flashes of light or small electrical discharges. But every time he used his powers, he felt drained afterward, like running a long race. "There's Dr. Martinez and her family," Lucy said from behind them. She had insisted on coming despite Jake's protests. "And I see some of the Zephyrians." Jake counted the prisoners. 43 humans and 12 Zephyrians, all being loaded onto a transport ship. The Korthak guards carried those red energy weapons and wore armor that looked too thick for regular bullets to penetrate. "We need a distraction," Jake said. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from the prisoners." "Like what?" Stone asked. Jake looked at the fusion power plant that supplied electricity to the colony. It was a small reactor, but if he could absorb its energy and redirect it all at once, it might create an explosion big enough to convince the Korthak that the colony was fighting back. "I'm going to overload the power plant," he said. "That's suicide," Stone said. "Even if you can absorb that much energy, releasing it could kill you." "Maybe," Jake said. "But if I don't try, those people are going to be slaves for the rest of their lives." Before Stone could stop him, Jake ran toward the power plant. He had covered half the distance when a Korthak soldier spotted him and raised his weapon. The red energy beam struck Jake in the back, and once again, his body absorbed the power instead of being destroyed by it. This time, Jake was ready for it. He felt the energy flow into him like water into a sponge, making him faster and stronger. More Korthak soldiers turned toward him, firing their weapons. Jake dodged some of the beams and absorbed others, feeling the power building up inside his body like pressure in a bottle. He reached the power plant and pressed both hands against its outer wall. "Come on," he whispered, trying to connect with the fusion reactor inside. The energy inside the plant was different from the Korthak weapons. It was hot and wild, like trying to hold onto lightning. Jake felt it rushing into his body, filling him with more power than he had ever imagined possible. His vision flashed white, and for a moment he thought he might pass out. But then he felt something else. A presence in his mind, like another person was there with him. "You're not alone," a voice said inside his head. It sounded like a woman, but the words seemed to come from very far away. "There are others awakening. Who are you?" Jake thought back. "My name is Elena Rodriguez," the voice replied. "I'm a prisoner on the Korthak mothership. They've been studying humans like us for years. You have to be careful. If you use too much power at once, it will burn out your nervous system." Jake felt the energy inside him reaching dangerous levels. He was like a dam about to burst. How do I control it? Don't fight it, Elena's voice said. Guide it. Think of it as water flowing through a river, not an explosion. Jake tried to follow her advice. Instead of releasing all the energy at once, he let it flow out of him in a steady stream. The power plant's outer wall began to glow red-hot, then white-hot. Warning alarms started blaring across the colony. The Korthak soldiers who had been chasing him stopped and stared as the building began to shake. They turned and ran, shouting warnings to their comrades. Now, Jake whispered, and let the energy flow faster. The power plant erupted in a controlled explosion that lit up the sky like a second sun. The blast was loud enough to be heard from orbit, but Jake had directed most of the force upward, away from the colonists. When the light faded, Jake was lying on the ground 50 feet from where the power plant used to be. His body felt like he had been hit by a truck, and he could barely move his arms. Commander Stone and Lucy reached him first, followed by Dr. Carter, who had somehow made it out of the tunnels. Are you alive? Stone asked, checking Jake's pulse. Yeah, Jake said weakly, but I think I used up all my energy. Look, Lucy said, pointing toward the spaceport. The Korthak were loading their prisoners faster now, apparently deciding that the colony was too dangerous to stay on. But they weren't leaving. Instead, more ships were landing, bringing fresh troops and equipment. They're not giving up, Dr. Carter said. They want you badly enough to fight for you. Jake tried to sit up but couldn't. The effort of absorbing and redirecting so much energy had left him completely drained. Elena, he said. There's a woman named Elena Rodriguez on their mothership. She can communicate with awakened humans. She might know how many of us there are. How do you know that? Stone asked. She spoke to me when I was absorbing the reactor's energy, Jake said. I think the abilities create some kind of mental connection between people who have them. Dr. Carter helped him sit up. If that's true, then you're not the only human with these powers. Maybe we're not as alone as we thought. In orbit above them, Captain Hayes was making a difficult decision. Her sensors had detected the massive energy release from the planet's surface. Something down there was powerful enough to destroy a fusion reactor, and the Korthak were willing to fight an entire fleet to get it. Set course for the planet, she ordered. We're going in. Captain, the odds. Lieutenant Cross began. I know the odds, Rita said. But there are people down there who need our help. And if the Korthak want something that badly, then we need to make sure they don't get it. The Aurora dove toward the planet, its weapons charging for what would probably be the ship's final battle. Elena Rodriguez pressed her hand against the cold metal wall of her prison cell aboard the Korthak mothership. Through the mental connection she had discovered with other awakened humans, she could feel Jake Morrison's presence growing stronger on the planet below. She could also sense something else that made her heart race with hope. More humans were awakening. The connection had started small, just her and Jake. But when he had absorbed the power plant's energy and sent out that massive pulse, it had triggered something across the galaxy. Now Elena could feel dozens of other minds, scattered among human colonies and Earth defense ships. Each one was discovering abilities they never knew they had. Subject shows elevated brain activity, said the Korthak scientist who was monitoring her. Venom Seeker was smaller than the warriors, with 6 arms instead of 4 and scales that shifted color when he was excited. The neural patterns are expanding beyond normal human limits. Elena said nothing. Let the alien think she was having some kind of breakdown. She was actually coordinating the first network of awakened humans in galactic history. On Earth Defense Station Alpha, Commander Paul Bennett was staring at his hands in amazement. Objects around his office were floating in the air, suspended by invisible force. He had discovered he could manipulate gravity with just a thought. Dr. Sophia Kim, working in her research lab on Mars, had accidentally walked through a solid wall while running from what she thought was a chemical explosion. She could make her body phase through matter like it wasn't there. Lieutenant Mark Thompson aboard the patrol ship Defender found that he could interface directly with his ship's computer systems just by touching the control panels. The ship's artificial intelligence was responding to his thoughts. All across human space, people were awakening to abilities that seemed impossible, and Elena could feel them all through the network that Jake's energy pulse had created. Interesting, Venom Seeker said, studying his instruments. The subject's brain is communicating with something outside this ship. How is this possible? Elena smiled, finally speaking. You should have studied us more carefully before you started hunting us. The Korthak scientist leaned closer to her cell. What do you mean? We're not just individuals with special abilities, Elena said. We're nodes in a network. Each time one of us awakens, we become stronger. Each time you attack one of us, more of us activate. Venom Seeker's scales turned a worried shade of purple. You're saying that capturing you has created more of your kind? I'm saying you've made a very big mistake. On the planet's surface, Jake was slowly recovering his strength. Dr. Carter had given him energy drinks and medical stimulants, but his body was still weak from the massive power drain. Commander Stone paced nearby, listening to radio reports from the surface battle. The Aurora is putting up a good fight, Stone reported, but she's outnumbered 12-1. Captain Hayes won't be able to hold them off much longer. I need to get to that mothership, Jake said, forcing himself to sit up straighter. Elena is up there and she knows things about our abilities that we don't. You can barely stand, Dr. Carter said. How are you going to get into space? Jake closed his eyes and reached out through the mental network. He could feel Elena's presence clearly now, along with the dozens of other awakened humans across the galaxy. But there was something else. He could sense the network itself like a web of energy connecting all of them. Elena, he thought, focusing on her presence. Can you hear me? I'm here, her voice replied in his mind. How are you feeling? Weak, but getting stronger. What do you know about these abilities? More than the Korthak think I do, Elena replied. I've been studying their research while they've been studying me. The abilities aren't just random powers. They're tools designed by the architects to help different species work together. How? Your energy absorption lets you interface with technology and power systems from any species. Paul Bennett's gravity manipulation allows him to help ships navigate safely through dangerous space. Sophia Kim's phasing ability lets her explore places that would be deadly to normal humans. We're designed to be bridges between different worlds and cultures. Jake felt a surge of understanding. That's why the mental network exists. We're supposed to coordinate with each other. Exactly. And Jake, there's something else. The network isn't just connecting awakened humans. I can feel the Zephyrians too, and something that might be other species. The architects designed this to work with aliens. I think they designed it to save the galaxy from species like the Korthak. Above them, Captain Hayes watched her tactical display as another one of her ship's weapon systems went offline. The Aurora had taken heavy damage from the Korthak attack, and her crew was running out of options. Engineering. How much longer before the engines fail? She asked. Maybe 10 minutes, Captain, came the reply. Hayes looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there was whatever the Korthak wanted so badly. Something worth risking a war with Earth to capture. She made a decision that would change everything. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to ram the mothership. Captain, that's suicide, Lieutenant Cross said. Maybe, Hayes replied. But if we don't stop them here, they'll take whatever they're after and use it against other colonies. As the Aurora began its final attack run, Jake felt something extraordinary happen. The mental network suddenly expanded, connecting him not just to other awakened humans but to Captain Hayes and her entire crew. For the first time in his life, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of people he had never met. They were afraid, but they were determined to protect the colonists. They were willing to die to stop the Korthak from getting what they wanted. No, Jake said out loud, standing up despite his weakness. They don't have to die. Jake, what are you doing? Dr. Carter asked. I'm going to give them another option, he said. Jake reached out through the network, connecting with every awakened human he could sense. Paul Bennett with his gravity powers, Sophia Kim with her phasing ability, Mark Thompson with his technological interface. Dozens of others across the galaxy. Can you all hear me? He thought to them. We're here, came the chorus of replies. I need your help, all of you. We need to work together. What do you want us to do? Paul asked. Help me save the Aurora. Jake felt their combined power flowing through the network toward him. It was like having a dozen batteries all feeding energy into his body at the same time. But instead of the wild, uncontrolled force he had felt before, this was smooth and directed. Elena, can you cause problems on the mothership? He asked. I'm already on it, she replied. Through the network, Jake felt Elena using her abilities to interface with the Korthak ship's systems. She was causing power failures and computer malfunctions throughout the vessel. Meanwhile, Paul Bennett, sitting in his office on Earth Defense Station Alpha, was using his gravity powers to create invisible force fields around the Aurora, deflecting some of the Korthak weapons fire. Sophia Kim, despite being on Mars, was somehow using her phasing ability to reach through space and disrupt the targeting systems on the Korthak ships. Impossible, Venom Seeker said in his laboratory, watching his instruments go crazy. The network is operating across impossible distances. How are they doing this? Elena smiled from her cell. You really should have studied the architects more carefully. The tide of battle was turning, but Jake knew it wasn't enough. The Korthak still had more ships and more weapons. To really win, they needed to do something that would change everything. Everyone, Jake thought to the network. I'm going to try something. It might be dangerous. We trust you, came the reply from dozens of voices. Jake took a deep breath and reached out, not just to the awakened humans, but to every human mind he could sense. The colonists on New Terra, the crew of the Aurora, people on Earth and Mars and 100 other worlds. For just a moment, he connected them all. The moment Jake connected every human mind in the network, something extraordinary happened. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species shared a single thought at the same moment. We will protect each other. The mental network exploded outward from Jake's position on New Terra, reaching across space to touch every human consciousness. On Earth, farmers stopped their work and looked up at the sky. On Mars research stations, scientists felt a sudden connection to people they had never met. Aboard ships traveling between the stars, crews found themselves united by an invisible bond. But the network didn't stop with humans. The Zephyrian elder Harmonious Wind Through Crystals, imprisoned aboard a Korthak transport ship, felt the human network reach out to his crystalline mind. His people's harmonic communication had always been about connection and unity. When the human network touched their consciousness, it found minds that were already prepared to join something larger than themselves. Through Harmonious, the network reached other Zephyrians across the galaxy. Then it touched the Kelhari, a species of energy beings who lived in the radiation fields around stars. The Kelhari had been hiding from the Korthak for centuries, but they recognized the network as something the architects had always intended to create. More species joined the growing web of consciousness. The Vorthak, who could manipulate time on a small scale. The Nethys, who communicated through controlled electromagnetic fields. The Quinn, whose hive mind structure made them natural bridges in the network. Jake felt his consciousness expanding beyond anything he had imagined possible. He was still himself, still the 17-year-old human boy from New Terra, but he was also connected to millions of other minds across the galaxy. Through the network, he could feel Elena Rodriguez using her abilities to take control of the Korthak mothership's computer systems. She had escaped from her cell and was now working her way toward the bridge. He could sense Paul Bennett using his gravity powers to deflect asteroid attacks away from human colonies that were light years away from the battle. He could feel Captain Hayes aboard the Aurora, her ship now protected by force fields created by awakened humans she had never met, working together across impossible distances. But most importantly, he could feel the Korthak, through the network's connection to different species. Jake began to understand something that changed everything. The Korthak weren't naturally violent. Their aggression came from exposure to dark energy fields that had corrupted their minds over thousands of years. The dark energy made them hungry for power and unable to feel connection with other species. It drove them to conquer and destroy, because they could no longer remember what it felt like to be part of something larger than themselves. Elena, Jake thought through the network. Can you access the Korthak medical records on their ship? Already doing it, she replied. Her consciousness was now interfacing directly with the alien computer systems, reading data faster than any normal human could process. Jake, you're right. They have extensive records about dark energy exposure. It's like a poison that affects their brain chemistry. Can it be reversed? Maybe. But it would require channeling massive amounts of clean energy through their nervous systems, the kind of power that could kill them if it goes wrong. Jake felt the combined strength of the entire network flowing through him. Humans, Zephyrians, Kelhari, and dozens of other species all connected and working together. He had never felt so much power, but he had also never felt so much responsibility. I know what I have to do, he said. On the bridge of the Korthak mothership, War Prime Skull Render watched his tactical displays with growing confusion. His ships were losing the battle, but not because they were being outfought. Their weapons were malfunctioning, their targeting systems were failing, and their engines were running at reduced power. "Science Adept, what is happening to our ships?" he demanded. Venom Seeker looked up from his instruments with 6 arms shaking in fear. "The human network has evolved beyond our predictions. They're not just connecting with other humans anymore. They're linking with multiple species across the galaxy." "Impossible. No species has that kind of range." "The architects did," Venom Seeker said quietly. "We always assumed they were myths, but what if they were real? What if they designed this network to activate when the galaxy faced a threat like us?" Before Skullrender could respond, Elena Rodriguez walked onto the bridge. She should have been locked in a prison cell, but she moved like she belonged there. Her eyes glowed with soft energy, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. "Hello," she said calmly. "We need to talk." Skullrender raised his weapon, but it wouldn't fire. Elena had already taken control of the ship's power systems. "You're going to listen to me," she continued, "because I'm about to save your species." On the planet below, Jake stood up despite his exhaustion. The network was giving him strength from millions of connected minds, but more than that, it was giving him purpose. Dr. Carter, Commander Stone, and Lucy watched in amazement as energy began to flow around Jake's body like visible light. "Jake," Lucy said softly, "your eyes are glowing." Jake looked at his little sister and smiled. "It's okay. I know what I'm doing now." He reached out through the network, connecting with every awakened human and every allied species. "I need all of you to trust me," he thought to them. "I'm going to try to heal the Korthak, but I need everyone's help to do it safely." "We're with you," came the reply from thousands of voices. Jake rose into the air, lifted by forces he was only beginning to understand. Energy flowed around him like a personal aurora, and his consciousness expanded to touch every Korthak in the fleet. He could feel their pain now. Centuries of dark energy exposure had turned them into monsters, but deep inside, they were still the peaceful engineers and healers they had once been. The corruption was like a disease, and Jake had the cure. Working through the network, he began to channel clean energy into every Korthak mind simultaneously. It was the most difficult thing he had ever attempted, requiring precise control to avoid killing them with too much power. Elena helped from the mothership's bridge, using her connection to the alien computers to monitor each individual Korthak's vital signs. Paul Bennett provided gravity fields to contain the energy flow. Sophia Kim phased the harmful dark energy out of their systems. Mark Thompson coordinated the technological aspects of the healing process. Across the galaxy, dozens of awakened humans and allied species worked together to save their enemies. Skullrender dropped his weapon as the clean energy flowed through his mind. For the first time in centuries, the constant anger and hunger for power began to fade. He could remember who his people had been before the dark energy corrupted them. What have we become?" he whispered, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "You became what the dark energy made you," Elena said gently, "but that's not who you really are." Around the Korthak fleet, the transformation continued. Warriors who had spent their lives destroying and conquering suddenly remembered their species' original purpose as builders and healers. The corruption that had driven them to violence for so long was being cleansed from their minds. When the healing was complete, Jake slowly descended back to the ground. He was exhausted but smiling. Through the network, he could feel the change in the Korthak. They were no longer enemies but potential allies. War Prime Skullrender, now calling himself by his original name, Builds with Gentle Hands, contacted the planet's surface. "Humans of New Terra," he said, his voice no longer harsh with aggression. "We have done terrible things to you and many others. We wish to make amends." "The healing will take time," Jake replied, speaking for the entire network, "but we're willing to help you rebuild your civilization the right way." Over the following weeks, the galaxy began to change. The network that Jake had created became a permanent bridge between species, allowing for cooperation and understanding on a scale never before seen. The Korthak used their engineering skills to help repair the damage they had caused. The Zephyrians shared their knowledge of harmonic communication. The Kelhari taught other species how to harness clean energy from stars. Jake established the Guardian Council, with representatives from every species in the network. Their mission was to protect developing civilizations and prevent the kind of corruption that had affected the Korthak. On New Terra, life slowly returned to normal, but with important changes. Lucy Morrison had begun showing signs of awakening abilities, as had children from many other species. The next generation would grow up connected to the network, understanding from birth that they were part of something larger than themselves. Dr. Carter continued her research, but now she studied the network itself, working to understand how the architects had designed such an incredible system. Commander Stone became the colony's ambassador to the Guardian Council, helping to coordinate defense efforts across multiple star systems. Captain Hayes and the crew of the Aurora became heroes of the new era, their willingness to sacrifice themselves having helped convince other species that humans could be trusted with great power. Jake, now 18 and bearing the title of Guardian Prime, often stood on the hills overlooking New Terra colony and reached out through the network to check on the galaxy's progress. He could feel the peaceful,